What's up, guys? It's the Bluebloods, and we are back with another Best of 2020 episode. This episode, we are talking breakout players of college football. We cover some Group of Five players, and we go through all the Power Five conferences and tell you what stars really broke out and put themselves on the map and are either improve their draft stock, or set themselves up for a huge 2021 season. We got a lot of players to cover, a lot of schools to get to. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Let's start at the Group of Five, Brandon. This could be any Group of Five conference. We don't have time to go through like 15 different conferences. Y'all be here for like 2.5 hours. We know we don't want to waste your Thursday that much. But Brandon, who is your first player from the Group of Five that you would consider the breakout star of college football?
Once again, not really group of five, but since we're kind of grouping all these together, I'm going to give it to an independent player. And it's one of my independent players, like one of my MVPs for that conference as well. And I know he had a really great season last year, but this year he really came out of his shell, and that's Zach Wilson. I mean, this kid was unbelievable this season. You know, he played in all 12 games, BYU played. And in those 12 games, he had a 73.5% completion percentage. He passed for nearly 3,700 yards, and then he got it done with his feet too, Zach. Like he had 254 total rush yards on the season. That's better than Chuba Hubbard, I'm pretty sure. No, don't quote me on that. but
It might be,
uh,
honestly, the way Chuba Hubbard played this year.
no kidding, dude. But really, I mean, more than anything, Zach Wilson is just like a playmaker. And yeah, he was a breakout player. I understand he was good last season. I understand we talked about him before. He's never had a season like he had this year. He had 33 passing touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. And I mean, good Lord, this kid made it into he made it onto a lot of people's Heisman watch list late into the season. I know he wasn't invited to the Zoom call, but he was on that watch list for a little while there. Uh, he he's improved his draft stock maybe more than any quarterback that's played this year, and I think that's really saying something in this class.
I should have known you were going to go cop out. This is
Cop
just
out,
cop out. I mean, didn't you pick him as your MVP?
as I led off with that, Zach. Yes,
That's tough. That's a cop out to me.
that's not a cop out.
Oh, my Lord. You know, I went the opposite way, guys. I was true to y'all. I picked two other players that I didn't talk about on the MVP episode because Brandon's, I gotta set like ground rules when we pick topics.
No,
Like what did you pick? Devontae Smith as your breakout for the SEC?
yeah, no, I didn't actually, Zach. I resent that.
Listen, I'm gonna start with the defensive side of the ball because I think this guy, if we only could pick one Brandon, I would have went with him. And that's Shamar Jean Charles from Appalachian State. He's a DB, and I think he deserves the recognition over anybody in the Group of Five. Last year, he graded outside the top 70 according to Pro Football Focus in coverage grades. This year, Brandon, a top 5 defender in coverage. Last year, he allowed over 55% completion percentage against him. He had 7 pass interference penalties, almost 500 total yards allowed, and over 40 catches. This year, man, I think he may have been the best defender in the Group of Five and arguably one of the top in the entire country. He was targeted over 50 times, Brandon, allowed 17 catches. That is a 32% catch rate.
Right.
That's stout. He allowed less than 200 yards all season and less than 2 touchdowns.
Right.
And against arguably one of the best Group of Five teams in the country, Coastal Carolina, Brandon, 0 catches allowed in that game. And that was one of the most explosive offenses in the Group of Five. So this kid balled out, and Brandon, he was number 1 in the entire country in pass breakups with 16.
That's
That,
bananas.
he had 1 less pass breakup than he allowed catch all year. And it booted him up to second in Sun Belt history with 30 pass breakups in his career. He's stepped his game up in a huge way, and I don't think he's getting the national recognition he deserves. And I think he's going to be a sleeper in this upcoming NFL draft. But to jump like he did from junior to senior year, man, there was no one else I would rather give it to than this guy. And in terms of offensive, Brandon, we'll snake this. I have another quarterback. It's not Desmond Ridder. It's not Zach Wilson. How about Grayson McCall? Coastal Carolina redshirt freshman quarterback, his first year starting. And this kid balled out. I mean, he was almost the sole reason Brandon Coastal Carolina was where they were. Almost 70% of his passes completed, 2,400 yards passing, 26 touchdowns, only 3 turnovers, Brandon, and 7 rushing touchdowns. Just in the Sun Belt, Brandon, second in completion percentage, led the conference in passing yards, second in yards per attempt, first in passing touchdowns, first in passer efficiency. What else you want? Sixth in rushing touchdowns against running backs, Brandon, and first in total yards. And in terms of the entire country, he was eighth in yards per attempt, 10th in passing touchdowns, fifth in efficiency, and sixth in yards per play. What else could you want from a redshirt freshman making his first ever career starting season after not having an all season this year, Brandon?
Right.
He didn't have an all season to get used to the playbook or anything, and he wins the Sun Belt Player of the Year and was the biggest factor at Coastal Carolina. I think this kid's going to even break out to another level next year, Brandon, with an entire year of experience and an all season to develop. I think he's going to be arguably the best returning group of 5 player in the country and arguably one of the best quarterbacks returning in the country overall.
Right. No, I definitely agree with you. It's like, I mean, the kid's an absolute stud, and I don't think anyone, I mean, when you talk about like true breakout players, like, how can you not think about him? I mean, as a true freshman coming into the season, like you said, no off season or anything to prepare. I mean, it's not like, some of these guys that, yeah, they were breakout players, but maybe they were a senior. Maybe they've had time to play on like an elite defense. And I'm thinking of players like a Jarrell White from Cincinnati, players who, yes, they've had
Right.
incredible seasons, but they've been there for 4 years, and yeah, their season this year might stand out a lot, but no, I mean, yeah, I mean, that is absolutely incredible pick, Zach.
Yeah, and that was my picks for the group of 5, but let's move on to the ACC, Brandon.
Oh, hold
This
on, hold
is
on.
my bad.
Who says I don't? Who says I don't have two?
Okay, go ahead. Inform us. Who else did you pick for the group of 5 MVP? I need to know because that's probably who you picked here, right?
No, it's not, Zach. I do have I have a defensive player though, and I know that comes as a shock to people. That's almost as shocking as me not picking my second MVP.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think I've ever heard you talk defensive, the defensive side of the ball.
I'm not good at it, Zach, and you're about to understand why. I don't even want to say it. I'm kind of embarrassed. Okay,
Go
I'll
ahead.
say it.
I need to hear.
I've got Zaven Collins. Zaven Collins this year, 2020 AAC Defensive Player of the Year, came out in an 8-game season with 36 total touchdowns, not touchdowns, tackles, 54 for, I'm sorry, 4 sacks, which doubles his last season, 4 interceptions on the season as a linebacker. This kid's incredible. That's why I don't talk defense. That's all I have to say about him.
He was like, I didn't watch a lot of film. I got the stats here. This is my breakout player of the year. I have nothing to tell you about him.
That's right.
I like the pick, man. The kid is a stud. I saw him play just a few times this year in some of the national televised games. I have no problem with that pick. I see if you did your research, I just don't see how you didn't come across Shamar or Grayson McCall or someone like that. But I could be a little biased there. But
You are biased. Everyone knows that.
let's move to the ACC, man. I'll kick us off here since, I put you on the spot last one. I got 2 defensive players in this conference, Brandon. We are polar opposites in what side of the ball we like to talk about. And I feel like I cheated here a little bit because they're both on the same team and both play the same position.
Okay. Yeah. Pitt.
I have Brian Barisi and Miles Murphy, both
Oh, wow.
true freshmen, Clemson defensive linemen. Man, I don't think there were 2 more dominant freshman D linemen than these 2 guys, man. Let's start with Miles Murphy. He was the lower rated guy, but I think he outplayed even Brian Barisi, who struggled with some injuries this year. In only 12 games, Brandon, he had 51 total tackles. He led the team with 12 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. All of this, Brandon, no offseason, no fall camp, no summer camp, trying to gain knowledge of Brent Venables' playbook, which is one of the most complicated schemes in terms of defensive football. and he didn't have any chance to earn any playing time. So he's trying to go out there and earn playing time by playing big time games, and he dominated. He popped off the screen for me. Brandon, his first start was against Wake Forest on the road. 7 tackles, three and a half tackles for loss, and 2 sacks in his first ever game as a true freshman. He was a freshman All-American, ACC co-newcomer of the year, and right now I think he's the most talented defensive lineman on the Tigers right now. And Brian Barisi struggled with injuries, but in his limited action, found ways to make plays. 23 total tackles, 6.5 for loss, 4 sacks, broke up 2 passes as a defensive tackle. Not really sure how that happened, but hey, the kid was balling, and I think these 2 guys, Brandon, might be the most dominant defensive line duo in the coming years. And with Clemson returning, like I think it was 18 players with defensive starting experience, and whether it be one game or multiple games, they're returning everyone pretty much from their defense except transfer Mike Jones. These guys are going to be key pieces, and I think next year you're going to have to hear a lot of Brian Barisi and Miles Murphy.
I agree with you, Zach. And that kind of caught me by surprise after how much you've been talking about 2 players on Pitt's defense. I thought that was definitely where you were steering into with this one.
They were kind of already established. I mean, didn't you kind of expect those type of seasons from those 2 guys?
Yeah, no,
especially being seniors.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I don't know. I can't disagree with you there, Zach.
And I picked one as my MVP, and I don't cheat our listeners out of information like you. So I delivered for the people with 2 other defensive linemen.
See, what Zach doesn't understand here, guys, is that we're a team, and you don't tackle. So if we were both if I'm the quarterback of this podcast and Zach's like a strong safety, you don't tackle the quarterback. If I'm on his own team. Like, you don't run out on the field because you got too much Bama in you and tackle me because I play offense. Like, that's not.
I got too much Bluebloods in me.
You got too much Bluebloods in you. Zach, the ACC was kind of tough for me. I know it probably shouldn't be, but it was. And where my mind went to immediately, just because this beginning of the season stood out so much to me for this one player. I understand he kind of fell off toward the end, but he was having a breakout season. I mean, Cameron Harris for Miami in his first few games was incredible. It's not. How is this a bad look?
I thought you were on the right track because I had a running back I was going to pick, and I thought you were going to go there, but you went a complete opposite way. But if you're talking beginning of the season, I'll give it to you. Go ahead. I'll give it to you if you're talking about beginning.
Now I want to know who we're talking about.
Kyron Williams for Notre Dame.
Fair enough. No, I'm talking about strictly beginning of the season here, Zach. No, we don't talk about Notre Dame on this podcast. Get out of here. No, I'm talking about Cameron Harris. And the main thing that stood out to me, Zach, is that through 11 games, he had 643 rushing yards. But honestly, about 400 of those came in the first 3 games when everyone thought Miami was the real deal. Everyone thought that they had a serious chance to beat Clemson until they got smacked. But in this season, Zach, Cameron Harris scored twice as many rushing touchdowns as he did last season. He still averaged the same amount of total yards. He even had more receiving yards than he did last season in fewer games. I think that he had an incredible beginning of this season, and it really shows when we went from last year. Just the only thing we had to say about Miami last season were not very positive things. I would say they were all negative. To this season, talking about this Miami offense might be the real deal. This Miami defense is the real deal. And I think Cameron Harris is a big part of that in the beginning, at least. And I get it. They had Derek King, and he made this offense. He gave this offense so many more options, but Cameron Harris pulled his own weight.
I don't mind that pick because I feel like his biggest role in terms of what he did this season was carry that offense while Derek King was learning the playbook and trying to find his role.
Definitely agree.
And so I think that's where you kind of save yourself to a point is where okay, yeah, he did it when he was needed most. So I like that pick, for the most part, but I still think if you're gonna go running back, you for me, like you have to go Kyron Williams, right?
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from there. I do think that Kyron Williams had an incredible season. Um, I just kind of I yes, he stood out to me, and yes, he was a big part of that Clemson win and a lot of other wins for Notre Dame. I feel like if we're going to talk about Notre Dame, though, we have to talk about that defense. It, I don't know. I feel like that defense had, and I get it. Miami's defense had a lot of breakout stars. Miami's special teams had a lot of breakout stars, and like their kicker and punter that could just destroy me if they wanted to. But I feel like Notre Dame had a lot of breakout stars this season, and that's kind of I think what deterred me from just choosing Kyron Williams.
Yeah, because I mean Jeremiah Owusu, I mean he was he had
Right,
a lot of I guess somewhat hype coming into the season, but no one thought he was
AC,
going to do what he did.
ACC Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted that. And then, you had Kyle Hamilton at safety, who I predicted could have won that award, and he still had a big year if it weren't for some injuries. And then Kyron Williams rushed for over 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns. Ian Book had one of his better years as well. The offensive line was the best in the country. So, I mean, breakout stars galore in South Bend. But, Brandon, who is your second breakout star in the ACC?
So I know what I just said about Notre Dame. I have a guy on their offense that I think carried his own weight, and no one really expected it. And the reason being, um, Notre Dame had a lot of players at this one position to start the season, and a lot of players that we really thought might have played ahead of this guy. Um, but I think, when you think of Notre Dame, what do you think of, Zach? What do you think of, like, historically when you think of
Tight
Notre Dame
ends.
players? Tight ends, of course. So Michael Mayer, true freshman Notre Dame, um,
I
I
like
think had an
that.
incredible season for what he did. And I say that because Notre Dame literally had five tight ends on this roster. Most of them were upperclassmen, and Michael Mayer came away with the starting role in this offense. 42 total receptions through 12 games, two touchdowns, but he wasn't like a red zone target for this team. Um, what's really impressive to me were these 450 yards that he put up and 11 yards per catch. I mean, he was just a staple of this offense. When you think about Ian Book and what he did for this offense, yes, he did a lot with his feet, but when he did pass the ball, he was passing the ball to this guy most of the time. I mean, he really came out of nowhere. And if you would have asked me preseason who I thought was going to be who if I had to give you three players who I thought were going to be an integral role in this Notre Dame offense, Michael Mayer's name. I don't even think I knew his name preseason, and that says a whole lot for what he's done.
Yeah, I really like that pick. I feel like you said, the tight ends and probably offensive linemen are what Notre Dame is known for the most. And the kid made a big impact. He was one of the top targets for Notre Dame and Ian Book. And that wide receiving core wasn't very talented, Brandon. And so
No,
for him to step up and kind of give Ian Book a go-to target in the biggest moments was huge. And I think Kyron Williams finally offering a rushing attack helped that. And I think all of these factors that we just talked about for Notre Dame is kind of what came together and gave them a shot at the playoffs. Because, I mean, before the season, like, yes, everyone thought Notre Dame was going to be good, but they weren't one of the teams I thought was going to make the playoffs.
right,
And because
right.
I didn't expect Kyron Williams, I didn't expect this kid, I didn't expect that defense to be that good. So it all came together for Brian Kelly and the Fighting Irish. So let's go ahead, man. Let's move on to the Big Ten. This was kind of hard, man. They only played like 6 games. So who was your first breakout player in the Big Ten conference this year?
So yeah, the Big Ten was tough, especially when their season got cut short, and especially when my first MVP season got cut even shorter than the regular season.
Oh
Um,
my
and I
goodness.
know, Zach, I can't wait for this. I cannot wait to hear what you have to say because this is also one of my MVPs. But how is Michael Penix Jr. not literally the definition of a breakout player?
Because you
Like,
deemed him as the MVP.
but was he not? I mean, how did he do last year, Zach? How was his
You
last
are you
season?
are shortchanging our listeners. They heard this episode already, Brandon. They heard
That's
it.
fine.
It's in the
It's
catalog.
It's so nice they
All
heard it
right,
twice. Is what
I'll
happened.
let you. I'll let you off the hook. If you can give me a definition or like description of his season and why he's a breakout without citing anything you cited on the last episode, I'll let you. I'll let you go. No more comments from me.
You know what I didn't say on the last episode? Actually, this was super obvious. Uh, he beat Penn State in the first game of the season. He did alone with that overtime touchdown. Zach, I didn't mention that once. I did not mention that. Run the tapes back. I don't know how I didn't mention that, but I did.
He was
Probably
short
should
though.
have. He wasn't short, Zach.
He was a little
that's
short.
not that's not what the referee said, and that's not what the
That's fair
scoreboard
enough.
said at the end
That's
of the
fair
game.
enough.
And he single-handedly sent Penn State into a spiral that they would never return from.
They won
Because
their last 4 games of the year. They recovered. It just took them five straight losses.
here's what I'll say, Zach. I think that what happened in that scenario, because and you let me know if it's a coincidence or not, seems like Penn State started getting kind of good right about the time that Michael Penix got hurt. I mean, I'm not really into conspiracy theories, but this might be one that I can hop on. I think he was
The Michael Penix curse on Penn State.
yeah, I think he's like their kryptonite. Well, Penn State might have a couple other kryptonites, but we'll leave that. That's not for our podcast.
Hey, leave the past in the past. Leave the past in the past.
Cash in the past. But like Zach said, you guys heard this episode. You guys know what he's done. 124 completions on 220 passes. What else, Zach? I mean, what else can I cite? 14 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, including the one that I just mentioned. This guy really gave his team energy. Tom Allen did too, but Michael Penix Jr. was the man for Indiana in the 6 games that he got to play.
I'll give it to you. And the only reason I'm giving it to you is because my first player is also from Indiana.
Oh,
Listen, and I deemed this kid my breakout candidate in the Big Ten before the season. Just wanted to give myself a pat on the back. Tywan Mullen, Indiana's cornerback. He outperformed even my expectations, Brandon. And it's so hard to list stats for a DB. Yeah. Everyone knows that. I mean, he had 37 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 3 INTs, 4 pass breakups. That's all good. Brandon, he allowed less than 46% completion percentage against him, which included 14 catches all year.
That's wild.
He made 7 plays on the ball in terms of INTs or pass breakups, but only allowed 2 total touchdowns. Yeah, that's stout. That's locked down, bro. And last year, Brandon, he led the country in pass breakups with 13.
Yeah.
This kid was had a minor breakout last year. Everyone say, can he redo it? He balled out again this year. Brandon Mullen is this is going to sound crazy. He is my pick for the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year next year. I think
really?
That's the type of potential this kid has. He has the length, he has the physicality, he has the speed, he has the instincts to be an elite DB. And I expect to see Tywan Mullen go early in the draft in a year or two. I think he's eligible next draft. So Tywan Mullen, easily my breakout player of the entire conference. And for offense, Brandon, this one was hard because there's a lot of guys who had a little bit of expectations coming in, but I want to go with David Bell, wide receiver, Purdue. And yes, he was good last year, but arguably, man, I think you could say he was the best receiver in the conference this year. Yeah. And he made a huge jump in only 6 games, Brandon. He caught over 53 catches for over 600 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Right.
In only 6 games. And in the conference, he was second in total catches, top 10 in yards, led the conference in touchdowns. And the reason I picked him, Brandon, is this is only compounded by Rondale Moore not playing. So defenses were doubling him just consistently because Purdue had no other threats on the outside. And no offseason, mediocre quarterback play. Bell played on a team that was devoid of top talent. They were a mediocre team, and he still proved that he was the best wide receiver in the conference. I'm going with David Bell here as my second breakout player of the Big Ten.
Right. And with my second breakout player of the season, I'm going with Graham Mertz for a game and a half. No, not really.
Stop it. I was about to
I'm
say
kidding.
I will end this podcast.
This podcast is over. Honestly, Zach, I don't even want to give a second. If I had to give a second, really and truly, and I understand this guy's been good in the past, I'd have to go with Trey Sermon. I know he was my other MVP. I know, I get it. I'm not going to do that. So I have one MVP for this episode.
It's all good. I only got one for the Pac-12. But before we get there, man, let's talk Big 12 football. Breakout players here. I'll kick it off, man, because I'm so excited to talk about this kid. I briefly talked about him on Couch Coach Live, and I went on there a few days ago. And that's Trevon Moehrig, TCU DB. I've talked about him how many times on the podcast, Brandon? Every time we cover TCU?
Several.
This guy took his game to a whole new level, man. He was on my list of players to break out this season for the Big 12. And, man, he did that and more. 47 total tackles, Brandon, 9 pass breakups, 2 picks, and a touchdown. He allowed less than 50% completion. Brandon, only 200 yards allowed on the season.
Right.
That's tough in the Big 12. And, Brandon, out of all the Big 12 teams, which two do you think throw the most?
Oklahoma and Texas.
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech, yeah.
Yeah, they throw a lot. I don't even know if they have a running back. Brandon, 0 catches allowed in either of those games.
Wow.
That's tough. That's a tough stat. That is one of my favorite stats of the season. I mean, I kind of look at this guy kind of like Patrick Surtain not allowing any catches against the 2 most pass-heavy teams in the SEC. He steps his game up in the biggest games. Brandon, first team all Big 12. He won the Jim Thorpe Award this season. It just shows the level of dominance that this kid achieved all season long. And listen, our NFL draft stuff's coming out very soon, guys. This kid's going to be a top 3 safety for me. I think he's going to be an instant starter wherever he goes. And I said this on Couch Coach, I think this kid could be the next Antoine Winfield Jr. coming into the draft. I think he'll start year 1. I think he'll be able to play all around the defensive backfield. And I think he's going to make whatever team gets him very, very happy in the coming years.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Zach. I'm going to go other side of the ball with my first pick, obviously.
Of course
it's offense. Brandon's talking about offense. Everyone knows that. And I'm going to go ahead and give my breakout player of the year to another true freshman, Bijan Robinson. I mean, hats off to this guy. True freshman running back, came in, played at Texas 9 games, 86 attempts for 703 yards rushing. And not only that, but he had 196 yards through the air. This kid was the real deal. And he came onto this Texas team that hasn't had a running back in how many years, Zach? Several?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
I mean, just when you came into this season thinking Texas is going to have to lean on Sam Ehlinger alone, which they kind of did, Bijan Robinson steps in and really, I mean, gives Texas a ground game. And I think that he was a big part of Texas winning a couple of those borderline games this season.
I like that. I'm not going to lie. That I like that pick a lot. I thought about him. It's just that I feel like Texas underutilized him in just the most outrageous way. Like, you had arguably one of the best running backs in the conference, and you never gave him the ball.
Right.
And when you did, he set records against Kansas State, who was one of the more stout defenses in the conference.
Right. Agreed.
It just blew my mind. But I got an offensive player. I'm not going to divulge all of offensive talk here. And I feel like this is kind of obvious. And I can't believe neither of us have talked about this kid. And we were real critical of this kid for a long time. But he turned it around late in the year. And that's Spencer Rattler, man.
Yeah. Yep.
You got to talk about – I mean, he took a red shirt last year through 11 passes. This year, over 317 attempts, man. Over 3,000 yards passing, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. A lot of those came early. He had 6 rushing touchdowns. Brandon, I mean, this kid was on point. I mean, I'm just going to tell you a stat, Brandon. I want to tell on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised are you? An Oklahoma quarterback led the Big 12 in completion percentage, yards per attempt, and efficiency.
Very. On a scale of 1 to 10, very.
You're surprised.
Yes.
Wow, they do this every year. Lincoln Riley does it. Lincoln Riley could take me and you, blindfold both of us, and we still lead. We lead the Big 12 in passing in that offense. For somehow, it doesn't
Little
matter who
sarcasm
he
for Zach.
gets. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who he gets, man. This kid can ball out. He led the Big 12 in passing yards. That was top 10 in the NCAA. Yards per attempt led that conference again, top 10 in the NCAA. Adjusted, it doesn't matter, top 10 in the NCAA. Led the conference in passing touchdowns, 8th in the country. This guy did everything, and touchdowns responsible for, he was top 5 in the entire country. Brandon, I know we were critical of him, and he did have some growing pains early, especially against teams like Iowa State. But this kid performed down the stretch, got them a championship in the Big 12, dominated against Florida in the New Year's Six Bowls. And I think Spencer Rattler was arguably one of the biggest surprises for me. And I think he lived up to that 5-star hype. And I'm really, really excited to see what this kid does next year.
Yeah, no, he had an incredible year. I mean, after we trashed him for the first 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 games, yeah, I mean, he came out this year and showed us wrong about half of the season. My last one is kind of a whatever. It's another running back actually, and it's Breakout Hall for obvious reasons. You know, coming off of his freshman season
Oh, what?
at Iowa State.
So disrespectful. So disrespectful.
He had 897 yards rushing in his freshman season at Iowa State, 9 touchdowns. He came out this season, rushed for 1,572 yards, 21 touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, 180 receiving yards. I mean, he doubled his receiving touchdowns, his rushing touchdowns. He more than doubled. He almost doubled his rushing yards this season for Iowa State. You know, in a season where we thought in the Big 12, when it comes to running backs, Chuba Hubbard has to be the big deal. He might not even been the best running back on his own team this year, let alone he wasn't even close to top 2 breakout players, MVPs, whenever you want to talk about Chuba Hubbard. He wasn't there. Breakout Hall was. He showed up. He came to ball this season, and that's exactly what he did.
Listen, I'll give you a break because he did break out this year because not many people expect him to do that. Except who, Brandon? I think on our website there's an article that talks about
Zach
Hall
loves to brag.
I do. I listen. I'm talking my whatever you want to say. I wish we're not a profanity laced podcast, so I can't say it. But I like to talk when I'm right, man. Because listen, I get a lot of critiques. Wait till the draft episode, Brandon. We're having an entire episode called "Zach was right about Justin Herbert," and we're posting it. It's going to be 30 minutes of me talking crap to LSU and Alabama fans.
I'll be honest with you, Zach. I don't think anyone really wants to hear that episode. They probably want to hear that episode less than they wanted to hear the last episode that we had. The Senior Bowl recap episode will go down in infamy in the Bluebloods Hall of Fame.
But what do you think the 3 worst episodes we ever done are? Like, I would say one being our first ever episode where we just sat on the phone and talked for 55 minutes about 8 games that no one cared about. Just rattled them off.
It made me question whether or not we should continue the podcast.
Facts. I'll listen back to the episode and I was like, man, I might not get a job in the future because of this episode.
Should we really post this or?
Yeah. And then like 2, I don't know, man. It could be last episode, but also that national championship recap was real bad.
Zach, I was partying that night. Everyone knows that.
You were. Brandon was an LSU fan, guys. He did not deliver a good episode. Man, you texted me the next day and you were like, we got to re-record this. You were like, can we do like a real recap episode? And then the Senior Bowl recap's a strong 3rd place. You know, anything else in our catalog, guys? Perfect content. Those 3, just go ahead. Give those to like the step kids you don't want. Make them listen to that repeated. Like when they get grounded, they got to listen to those 3 episodes of the Bluebloods. That is straight torture. But man, let's go to the Pac-12 here, man. This one had, I would say, a good bit of candidates, but I thought there was just one that stood above the rest. So I'll let you kick it off, man. Who is your first breakout player in the Pac-12 out there on the West Coast?
Yeah, Zach. There were a few. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of them. I'm not going to choose him because I'm gonna fix my ways here. I'm gonna not, go chalk like I normally do. I'm one of those guys. Um, Keaton, love Keaton. He's not a breakout player this season.
He was
Uh,
one last year.
he was last year, but this year people kind of expected a lot out of him, and he kind of under delivered, I guess. I honestly, if I could pick this whole Oregon State team, I would. Uh,
The
who ex-
entire team, just
who
everybody.
who expected that out of them? Um, oh man, this one was tough. Uh, why don't you hit us with your one, Zach? I'm kind of going through some stuff right here.
Going through some stuff. Listen, okay, I'm gonna nail this name. I nailed it on Couch Coach, but I feel like Talona Hufanga, USC DB, has to be the one pick. And it might be an obvious choice because I think he arguably was probably the best defensive player in the conference, man. He played well last year, but this year, man, he goes on to win the Pat Tillman Defensive Player of the Year. He's the first player to win this award since Adoree Jackson way back in the day. That was I think, didn't Adoree win our all-decade, like, punt returner or kick returner?
Yeah, kick returner.
Yeah, so, Brandon, this year, first in the Pac-12 in solo tackles, first in INT and INT return yards, number 3 in total tackles, number 3 in fumbles forced, 8th in sacks as a safety. Against UCLA, Brandon, 17 total tackles, a pick, 2 for loss, and a forced fumble, and had 4 straight games this year out of 6 with an INT this season.
That's wild.
The kid is a straight baller, dude. I mean, he led the team in tackles, Brandon. He had 62 total tackles this year. Second place had 41.
Wow.
And he had 4 INTs. Second place, 1.
Yeah, that's bananas.
The kid absolutely outplayed what I thought he could have. And for me, man, I really and truly think that this year this kid deserves this award. He was the breakout player. He declared for the draft, and I think he's right up there behind Mo Rig and them as one of the top safeties in this draft. And I think right now he's projected like late 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th round. You get him in any of those rounds, that's an absolute steal because I think this kid could be a starter in the NFL.
Yeah, Zach. I mean, I think that's a great choice. But going ahead, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Like I said, I had some things going on right there. I'm on my way home from work. I'll be completely honest with you guys. But with my 2020 breakout player of the year from the Pac-12, I also only have one. But I think the pick's obvious. And yeah, we've talked about him in the past few episodes, or I have at least. Love this guy, and he really showed out at the Senior Bowl. I'm going to have to go with Demetric Felton from UCLA.
I like
And,
that.
this guy is, I know I said earlier Michael Penix Jr. was the definition of a breakout player. But this guy, I think, might actually be the real definition of a breakout player. Yeah, he's been at UCLA since he was a freshman. He was a senior this year. Like I just said, he was in the Senior Bowl. He played every season up until now. This season, Zach, he had more rushing attempts. He had double his rushing yards, almost double his entire career rushing yards this one season, in only 6 games. This season he played 6 games as opposed to last year's 12. He had 132 carries this season as opposed to last year's 86, and he had 668 rushing yards this season compared to last year's 331. 5 rushing touchdowns came along with that. But this guy, I mean, he played wide receiver in the Senior Bowl for snaps. This season he had 22 receptions for 159 yards. That's the one area where he did slow down from last year, where they had him playing actual wide receiver. So last year, his primary position was wide receiver. He had 55 catches, 594 yards. But this guy really came out of nowhere, switched positions up, and was able to really dominate this ground game. And I think he was a big part of this UCLA offense getting off the ground and moving this season.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot, man. I mean, Demetric Felton was just a beast. And like you said, down in the Senior Bowl, man, he was the star of the show, to be completely honest with you. I was very, very impressed. I felt like I was cheating the people, Brandon. So I feel like I have to give them at least one offensive player. And you'll like this one. You picked Amon-Ra St. Brown for your MVP. Keaton Slovis is your boy. You might as well get him a ring by now. I'm going with Drake London for USC. 502 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. It was only in 6 games, so we got to take those with a, slight, like, okay, let's put this in perspective. But he was top 5 in receptions, receiving yards, top 10 in yards per catch, top 5 in receiving touchdowns. And all this being, he wasn't even one of the top targets on the team last year. This kid's 6'5", 210. He's going to be a physical, go get it type of receiver. And I think, Brandon, if Keaton's looking for a go-to guy next year, I think Drake London is going to be really, really high on this list. And I think you could have picked a lot of these wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Drake London, Brew McCoy. Any of these guys could have been breakout players. I think Keaton Slovis is putting them in positions to really succeed in that offense.
Right, I agree.
But, Brandon, last breakout player of the Pac-12, throw it at us.
Dude, I have one.
Oh,
I hate to do this to you guys. I had one.
This is tough. But let's go ahead, move on to the SEC, man. And, Brandon, I'll let you kick this one off. Your top breakout player performance in the SEC.
There were a lot of choices here, Zach, because my mind, when you think of breakout players, your mind immediately goes to, oh, well, there was Kyle Trask, who just did insane things the year after Joe Burrow did even more insane things, arguably. But I mean, there's a lot of players to pick from here. We are, I would say, an SEC centered podcast. I know we talk about all of college football, but we talk about the SEC maybe the most. I'm gonna have to go with Mac Jones as my breakout player of the year, Zach. I know we saw him last year. Wow. We saw what he could do. What Tua was hurt. Whatever. Don't give me that. You can't tell me that people expected him to have the season that he had this year.
I told y'all last year he was going to show out, and that Bryce Young was going to have to sit on that bench.
I mean, I think we were both on that train. But Zach, we didn't expect him to pass for 4,500 yards. At least I didn't. 4,500 yards this season as opposed to 1,500 last season. Yeah, he didn't start last year. He did play a lot because Tua was out. This season, he had 41 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions with a 77.4 completion percentage. And this is, I mean, that's insane. I mean, I know Joe Burrow had a 78% completion percentage last year, but we thought that was something that would never even get close to touched. And then Mac Jones comes out this season with 77.4. That's insanity to me. And I know people, even myself, have been giving Devontae Smith in this receiving core a lot of the credit for what Mac Jones did. But I think he surprised a lot of people, myself included, in that list.
I like it. I'm not gonna critique you for that, but I thought there were 2 more obvious choices there. Listen, I'm so excited for this. This is really the only reason I picked this topic, and like I told you we should do it, is because I get to talk about my 2 favorite players in college football right now.
Okay.
I'll give you a guess, man. Can you tell me my 2 favorite players in college football right now?
I mean, realistically, I would have to guess an Auburn player, but something about how you're leading up to this doesn't seem like it's an Auburn player.
Oh, all right. I'll start with the one that you should have known. Malachi Moore, Alabama.
Okay.
DB, true freshman. Brandon, you know how much I like this kid. I mean, his film, I cannot get enough of it, man. This kid balled out this year. 44 total tackles as a true freshman, 4 for loss, 3 INTs, Brandon, 6 pass breakups, and a touchdown. He led the Crimson Tide defense, Brandon, that talented defense where they're going to have probably 8 first-round picks this year. He led them in forced turnovers and started 11 games as a true freshman before an injury kept him out of the college football playoff.
Right.
I mean, all SEC freshman. He was a second-team all SEC selection. He was arguably the most dominant freshman DB in the country, and it showed why Saban is known for his DB development. Brandon, targeted over 67 times this season.
That's wild.
Only allowed 400 yards total and 1 touchdown.
Wow. Why do people keep targeting him? Why do people keep doing that?
They aren't watching the film, man, because I think it was I think it was the A&M game where he first popped off my screen where he got that huge pick six off of Kellen Mond. And from there, I always kind of paid attention to him. The kid is so fast, man. He's so instinctive, and he's a playmaker. Once he gets the ball in his hands, it has the chance to go back to the house. Brandon, he allowed one touchdown all year, made 11 different plays on the ball, and only had 2 PIs all year.
Yeah.
As a true freshman, getting thrown at 67 times. Explosive, physical, athletic in the biggest moments. And Brandon, I said this on Couch Coach and it took him aback. I'm standing by this. He reminds me so much of a young Minka Fitzpatrick when Minka was a freshman starting at Bama as well. And I think that's the type of ceiling we have on Malachi Moore. And I would not be shocked, even as a sophomore, Brandon, if he won SEC Defensive Player of the Year next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, Zach. This kid was very impressive. I think it was a big year for freshman DBs in the SEC.
1,000%.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. If y'all haven't watched this kid's film, man, y'all need to get on that, man. Find it somewhere because this kid balled out this year. And Brandon, you were right. It's an Auburn player, but you should have known who it was. And I think, the bias aside, I think once I say this kid's name, Brandon, you're going to say this is no bias here. Tank Bigsby has to be, should qualify as a breakout player.
He was on my short list, and he's really kind of. I'm going with Tank Bigsby as well. And I know this sounds like a cop out, but it's not. He was up there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he was the co-SEC Freshman of the Year, Brandon, which is spectacular given that he only started like 3 games this year.
Yeah. And
then he was hurt the last 3 games, so I don't think he played in the bowl game. He played limited in the Bama game and et cetera. 834 yards, Brandon, 6 yards per carry, 5 rushing touchdowns, had over 300 kick return yards, including a 103 return that was called back against Ole Miss. So we would have had over 400 yards in terms of kick return yards. He was 5th in the SEC, Brandon, in rushing yards, 4th in attempts in rushing yards per attempt, 2nd in kick return yards, and 3rd in yards per return. So this kid can do it all. And this stat's going to blow your mind, Brandon. He was the heart and soul of this Auburn offense, man. In games where he received 20 or more carries, he rushed for over 130 yards in every one of them, and Auburn won all 3.
Oh, 3-0. It's not only that. This kid's name is Tank. That's not his name, but it's his name.
I mean, his name is
win this award.
Yeah, his real name is Cartavius, guys, but he goes by Tank. And Brandon, the games where he didn't get 15 carries, the games with less than 15 carries, he never hit 100 yards, and Auburn was 2-3. And the 2 wins were against some really bad teams. I think it was Arkansas and I think Tennessee.
Right.
And Tennessee's the game he's got hurt. And he had 6 carries when he got hurt. So he was on pace. But Malzahn completely underutilized Bigsby throughout the entire season, relied way too much on Bo Picks, even though he arguably had the best freshman running back in the SEC. And Brandon, I think he's going to benefit from new O-line development. They got Will Freen from Tennessee, who's been – say what you want about Tennessee. They had some offensive linemen. That O-line up there was balling. And new head coach Brian Harsin, Brandon, he's had multiple running backs top 250 carries in every season that he's been a head coach.
I mean,
he gives running backs opportunities. And so Bigsby's going to get some chances. And Brandon, this is a crazy stat. So this year, Auburn landed 1 offensive tackle commit out of high school. Well, 2 actually, as of today. They did not have an offensive tackle commit to Auburn out of high school since the 2017 class, Brandon.
Okay, I mean, that's wild.
That shows you that Bigsby shined with an atrocious offensive line. That offensive line for Auburn was bad. The only games that they really showed out in was Kentucky and LSU. Outside of that offensive line was horrible. And I would argue that both of those teams didn't have really strong defensive lines. LSU, because of the mass exodus to the draft and injuries, really hurt theirs. And Kentucky, they aren't really known for defensive line outside of one person. So right. It's not a huge thing. But Brandon, I think Bigsby should be on the list of potential SEC Offensive Player of the Year next year. And I think he definitely, with Najee Harris leaving and a lot of these older guys going, I think he should be the odds-on favorite to lead the league in rushing next year.
No, I agree with you, Zach. And I mean, if you have this guy for at least another 2 years, then I mean, you are a lucky team because he is going like, yes, he broke out this season. He broke out in an injury riddled season. Like that's crazy to me that he was this good. And like I said, he was right there with me. He and for the shtick, I've got one more I'm going to quickly mention, but Tank Bigsby's really who deserves to be the breakout player of the year in the SEC. I think my shtick is I have to choose an LSU player, so let's get this over with. Uh, if I had to choose one not even diamond in the rough, maybe diamond in the rough, maybe he was just not playing under the right coach or something, the right system, whatever it was. He's probably gone anyway. I've got to go with Eli Ricks. Eli Ricks was nuts this year. He was the one shining spot in this terrible defense for LSU. Um, and the reason I think that he deserves to even be mentioned in this conversation is because of his 4 interceptions on the year, and 2 of those were pick sixes. So I mean that's
Ooh,
crazy to
that's
me.
tough.
I mean, half of his interceptions were run back for a touchdown. He had 113 yards after interceptions, so it's not like I don't know. He made things happen when he was on the field. Um, I hope he doesn't leave. If you're listening to this, Eli, please don't leave.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie to you. I think so. This is someone who could have been if injuries, didn't knock their season out. I think Miles Brennan was on track to have a real good case at breakout player of the year if he didn't get hurt.
Dude, he was killing it, and
He he
I
was
don't
what
like
the
the
leading.
reports I'm hearing right now.
He was what the oh yeah, I heard he might never be able to play football again, which would
Yeah,
be that would be heartbreaking. I mean, you see that with Justin Ross too. I mean, that everyone was saying he might not be able to play. He's supposedly coming back next year. I really hope Miles Brennan gets a shot, man. And if he doesn't, that's heartbreaking. But I think, listen, if you're looking for a breakout player next year, Max Johnson, LSU
you heard
quarterback.
it
If
here
he gets
first, guys.
if he gets a chance to start, that kid has a real good shot of being the breakout player of the year. And I'd be really, really excited to see him play. I mean, I'm not an LSU fan, but sticking on the LSU train, I think Max Johnson is going to be a monster.
Yeah, biggest bust of the season, Eric Gilbert. Let's move on.
Bro, Florida is killing the transfer portal, though. If we're going to be in all actuality, I mean, they got
Oh,
what
dude.
Demarcus Bowman, 5-star running back from Clemson, gets Eric Gilbert out of LSU, 5-star tight end. They got the 5-star transfer last year, Brenton Cox, out of Georgia. I mean, what else do you want, man? They're getting transfers from everywhere, and so is Miami. Let's talk about Miami getting what's his name from Oklahoma, the wide receiver. I'm blanking on his name now, but they also talked De'Aaron King into coming back. That both of the Florida teams, I heard on 247. Did you watch the 247 recruiting thing today? This is way off topic, but I now it's coming back to me
I did not.
where they're saying that like these Florida teams realize they can't keep all these players in state, but the advantage they have is that when these players get homesick, the only realistic options that can compete for them to transfer to are Miami and Florida. And that's why you're seeing both these schools dominate the transfer portal. And I
Yeah.
never thought about it like that. And I'm like, that makes so much sense because, like, you see these players from Miami going to play all over the country. Well, once they get homesick, there's only one place to go, and that's Miami or Florida.
Right.
They're in the
Sure.
north part of the state. And that makes me think, like, what is Florida State doing wrong?
What are they doing right? Because that's an
That's a
easier
fair
question to
enough
answer.
assessment. That's a fair
You're
enough,
talking about
but
you're talking about Charleston Rambo.
yes, Charleston Rambo went to Miami. Yes. That's a huge pickup because that receiving core is terrible, and Brevin Jordan is off to the draft.
Yeah, that's
Huge
tough.
pickup for De'Aaron King. De'Aaron King, Charleston Rambo, and now I'm blanking on the running back now. It was your breakout, Cameron Jordan. Or no, Cameron Harris. My Lord. Those 3 guys, Brandon, that 3-headed monster might be one of the best 3-headed monsters in the entire country on offense.
Right.
That's going to be Manny Diaz is doing stuff. But before we get on the Florida State train, we're going to wrap up this episode, guys. This is our breakout players of 2020 in college football, man. We appreciate y'all listening. Y'all are the best listeners out there. Guys, we made it happen, or we're making it happen in the process. I told y'all we're doing ACC in 28 days for the month of February. We got 8 of, I think it's the 12 or 13 teams in the ACC lined up. Interviews
Allegedly.
coming. Yeah, allegedly. Interviews coming very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. This is going to be an all season packed with so much content, way more than last year. So we appreciate y'all tuning in. Make sure to spread the word. If we're doing a team that you know someone's a fan of, make sure to tell them to check us out, subscribe, like, rate the podcast. We can't do this without y'all. In terms of social media, man, Instagram at @_Bluebloods, Twitter at @_Bluebloods, Facebook at the Bluebloods Pod, website, thebluebloodspod.com. I got a mock draft coming out soon, so make sure to tune in for that. I'm releasing 3 this year, one now, one after the combine, and one right before the draft. So make sure to check those out. We will post when those are released. Episodes coming back next week, so make sure to tune in for that. But for right now, guys, we out.